The reactive workload isn't going to go away. It's always going to be there. It's part of the role. But I think our thoughts impact our feelings, which impact our actions, which impact our results. So it all starts with how we view and perceive the role that we're there to play. And that will in turn shift the perception of others as well if we are more intentional about how we craft that.
You're listening to HR Superstars, a podcast brought to you by 15Five. On this show, we talk to strategic people leaders who are making a meaningful impact in their organizations and shaping the future of work. So get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind building high-performing teams and fostering a culture of growth and thriving. The future of HR starts here. Hi, everyone, and welcome to HR Superstars. I'm Karina Young, VP of People at 15Five. Now, most HR professionals didn't get into this work to spend their day just putting out fires, but isn't that exactly what a lot of us end up doing? We get so deep in the reactive day-to-day that it feels like there's no time or energy left for the work that is truly moving the needle for our organizations. And the longer we stay in that cycle, just the harder it is to get out. Our credibility takes a hit, our confidence takes a hit, and businesses begin to see HR as that function that's responding to problems rather than one that's preventing or even proactively identifying them. And that's why today I'm talking with Lisa Young, who works with HR professionals to break out of that cycle and help HR build the skills we need to start leading proactively. Lisa is the founder of HRHQ, an online HR community and education platform that offers programs and membership filled with practical training, resources that help you navigate your role in HR. Lisa calls her work HR for HR, and we are so happy to have her here on HR Superstars. So Lisa, welcome. So great that you're here today. What I always love to ask people is give me the movie trailer version of your life from where you started to how you ended up here today.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this chat, especially knowing that you're an HR professional yourself as well. So I'm sure we've been on the same journey in many instances. My story, my pivot into my own business is very similar to many others. February 2020, the pandemic hit. I happened to be on parental leave at the time with my first child and pregnant with my second. And the world changed and the way that we operated changed. And it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of online businesses and what I could do there. Being that the world was changing, the need for HR actually changed a lot too. I think that's across the world, that was a universal thing. HR got thrust into the spotlight. While on parental leave was a little, bored's the wrong word, but I had time up my sleeve. So I created an online course all about New Zealand employment law because there wasn't anything like that in the market and I thought it would be fun. I very quickly learned, though, that what HR people need isn't technical knowledge. They can find that, they can Google that. Now, these days, you can ask AI. It's the soft skills and the competencies that I think a lot of people were lacking. It's all well and good to know the process to discipline someone, but how do you overcome objections when the manager won't listen, or how do you influence their decisions? Those are the pieces that HR people were missing. My goals in doing that is really just helping elevate the profession. I want to help ensure that people on the front line in HR, growing their confidence, growing their capabilities.
I love that. So for people who aren't as familiar with what a day in the life of HR is like, paint me a picture of that. Like what's flying at an HR professional stuck in the reactive mode?
Yeah, look, generalist HR is a busy role. It's constant interruptions, employees dropping by, your emails pinging constantly, managers pulling you for a quick chat, lots of urgent tasks. I think the hardest part, though, is the constant kind of whiplash of switching context. Even without all those constant interruptions and without all of the challenging day-to-day things, the role itself is very busy. So you start the day with a pretty full to-do list. It's pretty stacked. And then as the day carries on, that to-do list often, the collecting dust and those proactive tasks that you really want to get to and the tasks that you're really excited about just don't happen.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think for the people listening to this who are in HR, what you're describing as the day-to-day really resonates, right? And I think especially that context switching, that is such a, what I call just a battery drain on HR leaders. That is very hard because most people don't realize that that's what HR is doing and they haven't experienced that themselves, where to your point, you have to go and put someone on a PIP with a manager who is not participating in the conversation you want. You have an executive who needs you to show up and describe a problem happening in the culture in a certain way. Then you've got to go and be on and celebrate with your team. You have to kind of be many different people in one day. And then you have to show up the next day and do the same thing again, but in a different order and with a different urgency. And that really just can eat at you if you don't have the time and the space to really sit back and recover. And I love what you said about the to-do list. I mean, it's just like, yeah, I think everyone, even myself included, can feel like that to-do list gets longer and heavier. What's the tip for HR leaders that they've crossed the line from just like, I'm busy to now I'm stuck in this cycle? Like, how do you know if you've fallen into that habit?
I think there's kind of two parts to it. So the first one for me is the behaviors. So what are the signs that you're stuck in reactive mode? It's like you said, you're always on, you don't have an off switch, whether that's during your day or when you get home, or it's constantly on your mind, constantly, causing you stress and worry. The inability to say no, huge problem, I think, in the HR profession. Everything feels urgent. You're pushing back on your own priorities. You say, oh, I'll get to that next week, but next week never comes. You're in kind of reactive, responsive mode, not actually value creation mode. And then you feel like you're constantly behind despite working so hard. And I think another thing to really note is the personal toll that's taking. Some signs that you might be stuck in reactive mode, I think for me, it was a lot of resentment. A lot of it I probably caused myself, but I felt resentment about the work I was doing, the people that were asking me to do the work, and then starting to just lose my confidence and have a bit of self-doubt, starting to question whether I'm actually good at my job. I was feeling like I was always not doing a good job, or always dropping balls. I was so busy, so exhausted, but I actually had nothing meaningful to show for it. One thing I hear a lot too in my membership, and I'm experiencing a lot with people I'm working with, is that just fallen out of love with HR. You get into HR with all these big hopes and dreams and this idea of what it's going to be. I got to a point where I was like, why do I do this to myself? Like, this is not what I signed up for. We got into HR to help people. We got into HR to make a difference. And it's really hard to feel that way when you're buried behind 137 emails and a stack of paperwork, and you can't seem to come up for air.
Completely. Well, and all those feelings that you described start to feed into one another, right? It's like your resentment toward the company feeds your self-doubt, which goes back to resentment, which feeds your exhaustion. It's like so hard. And when you're in the loop, in the way kind of we talk about it at 15.5, is like when you're below the line, it's hard to know you're there because everything just seems like it's your enemy. And I know for me, like when I'm starting to get in that reactive mode, it is like every thought I have is like a below the line thought of like, what is this person saying? What do they need? Why am I doing this thing? Like everything seems like a problem instead of being able to really see that opportunity, right? That really is there, but it's so hard. And one of the things I was just talking to someone about recently is, a lot of times when we talk about reactive mode, people call it firefighting mode, which I think is such an unfortunate name for it, because what you said in the beginning that's so poignant is that when you're in reactive mode, you're actually not prioritizing the most important things, right? You're just kind of going for what's happening and you're moving from one urgent task to the other. A firefighter knows what is most important, like the building that is literally on fire, right? Like they're not going to go like for the cat in the tree right now. They're going to be like, that's going to happen later. And I feel like there is this other word we've got to come up with, because I think sometimes in HR, we wear that as a badge of honor. Oh, I'm a great firefighter. I'm a great multitasker. I can get everything done. It's like, well, what if your identity was not attached to that? You were actually attached to something bigger, something more meaningful and fulfilling to who you are.
Absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with the identity piece. That's something I really push a lot when I'm working with people. Mindset is everything. And it's something that needs to come first. It has to shift before anything else can change. And that identity piece is really key, like you said. So it's moving from I am here to support to, maybe I'm here to make an impact and add value. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that's the same thing. And it sounds very similar, but it is different in practice. So, one is saying yes to everything. The other is, being more intentional about where you do focus. So yeah, the firefighting thing, 100%. Certainly not the kind of role that I want to do. If someone was to write down on paper, what does your dream role look like? It wouldn't be like, just going where I'm needed, whenever I'm needed. That's not what I want to do. I want to have control of my time. I want to shape my agenda. I want to do, the work that I want to be doing. And I think a lot of people listening to this who do work in HR and maybe are in this right now might be thinking, oh, that's all well and good to say, Lisa. Like, I can't stop all this reactive stuff from coming. I can't tell the managers to leave me alone. And look, the reactive workload isn't going to go away. It's always going to be there. It's part of the role. But I think our thoughts, impact our feelings, which impact our actions, which impact our results. So it all starts with how we view and perceive the role that we're there to play. And that will in turn shift, I guess, the perception of others as well if we are more intentional about how we craft that.
That's such an interesting way to think about how those beliefs are really keeping HR stuck where they are today, right? Are there any other beliefs that you've seen working with so many HR professionals that are kind of just like that hidden blocker that are keeping them held back without them really realizing it?
Yeah, I think you touched on one that I see a lot of. It's this belief that I've unconsciously equated being needed with being valuable. So, if I'm highly responsive and if I'm available and accommodating and helpful, then I'm going to become indispensable. And actually the opposite can be true. If that's how you're perceived and how you're viewed, then that's going to reinforce itself. It's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I also think a big one is people are so laser focused on doing a great job where they're at, which is important, right? Like if you are in a heavy admin role, if you're in a role that does require a lot of reactive work, then being good at that is huge. But if you do want to grow in your career and if you do want to step up to the next level, but if you're not getting exposed to or working at that more strategic level, you're not going to be ready to step into that next strategic role.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting blocker that so many people get stuck at as they're moving their career, right? Is they have a perception that is often reinforced by how companies promote, which is just that if I am the best in my job, then I can do the next job, which is unfortunately how sometimes the system is designed. But actually, if you want to do another job at a different level, or you want to move from being an HR admin to a business partner, you actually need to take on a different skill set. You need to expand yourself and realize what I'm doing today won't be good enough for that. Like I actually have to do something different. I always try to encourage HR leaders, like think about like, what is the person in that role doing that you're not today? Like, what are those skills? Try to reflect. It's not like answer 20 more emails a day. That's not the thing that's going to get you to be a true strategic leader, to your point.
Yeah. And I think if you are stuck in reactive mode, and that is how you've come to operate, you won't succeed in a strategic role because that's the very opposite of being strategic. Strategic is proactive. Strategic is foreseeing challenges and taking action. If we are in reactive mode, you're not going to be able to be a strategic partner.
Tell me a little bit more about your perception on how poor communication or lack of confidence in communication really keeps HR in this reactive mode. Where do you see that coming into play?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing is just the confidence to speak up, especially, in my experience, I've had a lot of challenge with this, especially when you are advising leaders who are much more senior than you or much more older than you. And that power dynamic can make it really challenging to speak up. I had one example earlier in my career. I think I was probably advisor level. And I gave some feedback to a leader, how they were managing their one-on-ones or something like that. And he said, with all due respect, I've been in leadership since before you were out of nappies. And I was like, okay. So yeah, it's challenging. And let's be honest, I lost confidence in giving feedback to that leader. I mean, he was an extreme example. Many were lovely. But if you don't have confidence to push back or challenge or disagree with something, you're just going to absorb everything and stay in execution mode. You're just going to do what you're told or do what's asked of you. If you can't shape the agenda of your work, somebody else will. If that happens, then proactive HR work really does become impossible.
Oh, yeah, completely. Well, what's interesting is what I find that a lot of HR leaders, to your point, struggle with that confidence, right? Like, because we are coming in working with leaders who sometimes do truly have more years in a role, even if they don't have the experience always to match it or the skills. But one of the things I can find so helpful for folks too is to just like start with asking more questions instead of even debating your point, right? Like sometimes just going straight into like, I have a different perspective, just ask questions, like just get the ball rolling that it feels normal and natural to be like, Lisa, I want to ask you this, or like, hey, tell me why this is your perspective. Why does this feel not important to you? Help me understand your priorities right now. Can be such a nice gateway as you're building that confidence.
Absolutely agree. And I think, on the topic of really what we're talking about today and being stuck in reactive mode, that's challenging to do. And often you won't want to do it. You'll be looking at your watch being like, got another meeting to get to, got to get to those contracts. So I'm just going to shut this conversation off and get moving. But yeah, you're right. Like those are the things that are going to shift perceptions. And if anything, help grow leadership capabilities. If you can ask thought-provoking questions, I always say that your advice is only as good as the questions that you ask. being able to ask really powerful questions is hugely important.
Yeah, that's a great gem. I absolutely love that. Tell me a little bit more, Lisa, about what you think about resilience, right? Because especially for people in HR, right, as you were talking about earlier, our role is about being on and ready at any moment, but oftentimes we are absorbing the hardest moments that people are in, right? No matter what it is. How do you really see HR leaders building resilience when they constantly have to hold space for other people, other people's experiences, their emotions? How can those two things live in harmony together?
We actually did a poll inside the community recently asking what we believed is the most important skill for an HR professional, and resilience came out on top, massively. And that makes sense because in our role, the highs are high, the lows are low, and we're right there on that roller coaster in the thick of it every day. So you're right. We spoke earlier about this context switching and the energy drain that can have. I've also, in my time, dealt with some pretty heavy, confronting, awful things, supporting people in the worst moments of their life. I absorbed that. I struggle to separate and not take that home with me. For me personally, I've learned that resilience really is an inside job, and I've leaned a lot into like mindfulness and mindset. My past self is absolutely cringing at me for that answer because I used to think that stuff was so fluffy and so woo-woo. But no, and I don't mean, I meditate every day. If you do, that's great, and that works for you, amazing. But for me, it's just the ability to check in with myself and notice my inner voice and any limiting beliefs when they arise, and being able to address those. I actually heard a few years ago, I can't even recall where now, I heard someone talk about resilience and comparing it to the human body. That's kind of always stuck with me. So the kind of analogy is that the human body maintains an internal temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius. The human body maintains an internal temperature no matter what's going on around it. You could be lying sunbathing on the beach, or you could be skiing in the snow, and it stays the same. And that's how I try to show up. So I want to be steady and centered regardless of what's happening around me, whether it's a high or a low, whether I'm in the middle of, someone's worst day or I'm celebrating the win with the team. I feel like my role is just to remain that constant, that 37 degrees. And look, just like the human body, there's going to be times when we spike a fever, we get overwhelmed, we burn out, there's lots going on, we kind of lose that steadiness. But my thinking is, obviously we're human, that's 100% normal, but I'm just always trying to bring myself back to 37. That's my baseline. That's my home. How can I bring myself back to this safe place? And for me, like I said before, that is being in check with myself. If I'm overwhelmed or if I'm catastrophizing, I'll catch those beliefs and I'll remind myself, I've done hard things before. I've been through situations like this and made it through. I'm making a difference. I'm adding value. If I'm doing something really hard, I will check in with myself afterwards. How am I feeling? What can I do to take care of myself? So I think it's 100% an inside job. It's mindset and it's our thoughts and our feelings that are really going to impact how we can get through those times.
Just measuring employee performance is no longer enough. 15.5 helps your HR team take action to maximize performance. With 15.5's performance management platform, you can easily set up review cycles, collect ongoing performance data, track employee goals, and deploy customized campaigns that empower managers to drive growth. Learn more at 15.5.com or click the link in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. When it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how you're in reactive mode when you've been sitting at your desk all day, you haven't even taken a bio break, like you shoved your lunch in your mouth during a meeting and you didn't even finish it. It's like even just remembering that the very basic self-care is actually like where you start and being able to keep that internal temperature, right? Like, did I get a good night's sleep? Like, did I actually take the time to sit and enjoy my breakfast? Or is like my smoothie still sitting here 7 hours later? Like, and sometimes we're going to have days that are like that, which is totally fine. But to know that like that doesn't need to be your everyday, that doesn't make you a better warrior. It doesn't make you this person, again, like that badge of honor of like, I can do it. It's like, actually, you should just take the time to take care of yourself, whether it is mindfulness, meditation, go take a walk outside, like you're a better person for that.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the whole idea of energy management, right? Like I can hear people listening to that saying like, I don't have time for a 30-minute break. I can't leave my desk. If I leave, I'll come back to 30 emails. And yes, you probably will. I think that's not going to go away. But your mindset and your clarity and being able to then tackle the tasks following a 30-minute break is so different. I think, we've got time management. Time is finite. We can't get more time in our day, but we can manage our energy. And if it is, a 30-minute break, going for a walk, clearing your head, getting yourself more energy, filling up again and coming back to the task, you're going to look at it differently. You're going to feel more creative. You're going to feel, less overwhelmed or whatever it was that you were feeling prior to that break, which is going to help you show up better, really, essentially.
Oh, exactly. And, there's so many people who I've met in my career, people who I've managed in HR who I find that like sometimes it's like they feel like that chaos is a part of their success. Again, like thinking about like the mindset shift you're talking about, what needs to change, that like, well, the more chaotic things are, I must be getting more work done. And even just having the time to self-reflect of like, is that what I'm feeling right now? Am I actually doing these things because I'm stuck in like my bad habits of chaos? Like that's the toolkit I'm pulling in. I think it's sometimes even just taking a quick moment to check in and be really honest with yourself of like, again, some days are busy and you're not going to have 13 minutes for that walk. Get it. But like, let's be real. Like, do you really not have 13 minutes? Did you really you could have woken up a little earlier today knowing your schedule, but you decided not to, and that's okay. And I'm saying this to myself as someone who literally hit snooze on my alarm more than once today. But like the trade-off of that was like, I didn't get to do the workout I wanted to in the morning. And I was like, well, now I don't feel great about it. So I should probably do something different tomorrow. But if I wake up tomorrow and repeat that behavior, that's not my job's problem. That's not my workload's problem. That's my problem. Yes. And sometimes it's really tough to be like, woof, I'm the problem here.
Yeah. And I think, by the nature of HR work, it attracts a certain type of person in my experience. People who are attracted to a career in HR are those supportive people, those people who really deeply care. They are often perfectionists. They are often overthinkers. So the fact is, your question around, do I have 30 minutes to go for a break? I think a lot of us overachieve, and that's our standards. And what I found is when I was starting this process of trying to unwind what I had created and built myself in a really unsustainable working model, my standard response time was most other people's urgent response time. So for me, it was being like, what's going to happen if I reply in 24 hours rather than same day? And actually testing that and saying, okay, placing a catch on fire, nobody's at my desk angry at me. And so, if taking that 30-minute break means that task doesn't happen today and you can't respond until tomorrow, what does that actually mean? And let's not catastrophize, because a lot of us want to over-deliver. We want to, be seen as that indispensable person, but at what expense, at what cost? And it comes down to what you actually want to be doing and what impact you want to be making. Because truthfully, in HR, impact is our ultimate measure of success, right? That's what we're all here to do. So what do I want people to say about me? Do I want people to say, oh, Lisa is so efficient. She's so responsive. Nothing's too much trouble. She's always so quick to help. Or do I want people to talk about how I had made a difference to their work, how I had, that initiative that she launched last month really changed and the support level that I had. We really saw a difference in our team with the productivity increased and, the on-flow effects for the business was ABC. Is that what I want to be? Yeah, it is. So sometimes it does come at the expense of maybe I am not known to be the most accommodating and readily available person, but, is that the impact I want to be making?
I love it. So Lisa, you talk a lot about the mindset shift alongside a system shift, that systems are kind of just as big of a part of pulling HR out of reactive mode. Tell me a little bit more about what are systems, habits that need to change for HR leaders when they want to create space to be proactive?
Yeah, I think systems is absolutely the key word there. And this might come from my background in operations and service delivery, but processes and structure can be really sexy and really can be. And the thing is when things get hard, when you're busy, when you're in that really overwhelming peak of work, you're only going to be as good as your systems that you can fall back on. So when I say systems, this is something I work with people on inside my Advisor Academy program. Where does our workload management kind of system come into play? Where does your identifying where your work's coming from? Identifying your processes for triaging that work. How do you identify what's urgent, what's not? Often, and I was guilty of this, people just live in their inbox. The oldest email is the next one on my to-do list. But the fact is, your inbox is only a list of other people's priorities. It's not your priorities that live in your inbox. So identifying your inbox as absolutely one of the places where your workload comes in. And then also too, I think energy management is key. I spoke about that before. So building that into your system, identifying what helps you refuel your energy, what takes your energy, and then structuring your work around that where possible. I mean, obviously, sometimes in HR, we can't decline a meeting and say, sorry, my energy level is going to be low at that time. But identifying that, look, if you know this stakeholder is particularly prickly and it might be a challenging conversation, then schedule a 30-minute window where you can go for a walk afterwards. Or if you're heading into a meeting that gives you a lot of energy, what can you schedule directly after that to help that momentum? So yeah, getting really clear on how you structure. Your time is finite. You can't get more of it, but you can be really strategic with how you use your energy.
I do love what you said, Lisa. I have to come back to this idea of your inbox is only a list of other people's priorities. Yes. That I think is like one of the most just brilliant things I've heard, because it is such again, just old habits, ways of working that like, if it's in my inbox, it's a task and I've got to tackle it. Yeah. Instead of remembering that you have the autonomy and the expertise to say, this is what my priorities are. This is what it looks like. Like, I will tackle that when it comes time. That doesn't have to be like this burning, flashing light waiting for you to address it.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to that mindset. If you are of the mindset that I'm in a support role, my role is to support, then you're probably going to view your inbox and other people's priorities as your priority. But if you can shift that and be like, is sitting here and responding to these 30 emails over the next hour adding the value that I want to be adding? Possibly not. I'll schedule that for tomorrow morning at 10 to 11. I'll do an inbox clear out. But right now I'm back. This is my priority right now. So I think, being able to, and that's hard for a lot of, again, like I said, the people who are attracted to HR tend to be those people pleasers. Setting boundaries can be really challenging.
Exactly. Well, there's so many tools now. I mean, even just tools and platforms like email inboxes that can help you prioritize. But there's no reason in a world of AI that you can't have something that helps you get through that work that is an energy drain, a time suck, and not a big value add. It's like the reasons that you're spending time on that are becoming smaller and smaller. It's just like, well, if you're going to choose to spend your time there, then you're going to choose to feed the reactive cycle. Like, you have to take a proactive step to get out of it and to find, again, like those systems or those ways of working that really support you in being able to level up the kind of service that you deliver to your organization, the partnership that you give to your leaders, and how you actually really drive just a totally different level of result. So what would you say, Lisa, for someone who is just deep in the fires right now? They have 100 emails in their inbox unread, their Slack is blowing up, they have a presentation they've got to do tomorrow, 3 next week, they maybe have to term someone, they are underwater. Where do they even start? What is the first step you would tell them to take?
Yeah. Number one, go easy on yourself. That's such a tough place to be. Like we said, self-care is really, really important. I think start really small. A huge overhaul all at once is only going to overwhelm things further, right? So it could just be as simple as starting by just tracking and getting a real sense of where your workload's coming from. Maybe no behavior shifts just yet. Just measure, for the next couple of days, I'm just going to get a little bit more aware of where my work's coming from. How many emails did I get today? Who are the main people that are emailing me? What is the current process for people who escalate urgent tasks? Is it a phone call? How am I managing those urgent tasks? Just getting really, I guess, aware of what's going on. It's that well-known principle of, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So I think starting small too, you're going to get quick wins. So again, don't try to overhaul everything at once. Just pick one thing. And prove to yourself that it's possible. Even if it's like, okay, I'm going to block an hour a day and I'm going to book a meeting room so that I go and, out of action, nobody can see me. And in that hour, this is what I'm going to do. If you just do that for a week, it's going to reinforce that confidence in yourself, that trust in yourself. It's going to hopefully have really positive impacts and that confidence loop will be like, okay, all right, if I can do that, then I'm going to add this as well. It could even be, you identify that everything feels urgent and you get phone calls and Teams messages and people walking up to your desk and you might think, okay, what I need to do first is really define what urgent is. And if something is urgent, how do I coach leaders to come to me? What's the channel that I need to be contacted on if things are urgent? So for example, if you choose to be deep in a task and you close down your emails and everything as you should, and you've told your stakeholders that if it's urgent, this is what urgent looks like. This is, the steps to take to problem solve. If you absolutely cannot, text me. That is the way to contact me. If you don't text me, I will not see it. And then that's the process. That's the structure. That's the system.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think it's just taking one small step, any one little thing. Someone who takes that small step tomorrow, they're going to do the one thing. They're going to define what urgent means for themselves, or they're going to figure out one thing to improve. When can they expect to actually feel like they're out of reactive mode? When are they going to tick the box on that?
If you are deep in that reactive mode, it probably is going to take a bit of time and work to really get out of that. But yeah, it's not going to be a, now you're reactive and then suddenly you're not. It's going to be a gradual shift, right? So you'll start feeling like you can take a lunch break. You'll start feeling a little bit of breathing room. You'll start being able to, whilst you have 7 hours of the day in reactive mode, that 1 hour is your safe place. But I reckon within a good month or two, you'll start to really feel, I spoke before about there being an internal feeling. I think you'll feel that first. You'll feel like resentment starting to lift, or you're actually doing work that actually lights you up. That 1 hour a day that you can sneak in to get your projects or proactive stuff done might be that energy boost that you need to really tackle those other 7 hours of tricky reactive work. So I think that the feeling will shift. Yeah.
One thing you've said throughout this, Lisa, is that you even come back to like, there are certain things you're still working on, or that or you're still building the habit. And that I think we should all, whether you're in HR or not, any habit that you're trying to build is going to have to be a lifelong practice, right? It's not like you're going to wake up 2 years from now and are like, I solved proactivity, I'm never going to be reactive again, because we're human, right? Different things motivate and encourage us. And we grew up with our own toolkit of what we need to survive. And so certain things will always tug on those little strings in you. And I think just like anything else, you'll just start to realize like, I'm better at not reacting to that tug than I was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, but that it's okay if you fail and make a mistake and you get reactive again. Like, you don't have to give up on the whole thing. You've actually just got to, one, you're human, so congrats. And two, like, you have not been taken over by an AI bot. You're still you. And now you've just got to figure out how to get back on the horse. Like, that's okay.
So true. I think that the fact is, you're always going to be seasons, right? Like, you could find yourself in a really great flow, feeling really good about how you manage your work. And then that end of year or end of financial, or your company comes to you and says, we need to expand by 20 positions, or there's going to be seasons where you're straight back into reactive mode. But it's just, again, like I said, you're only going to be as strong as the systems you have in place. So the system that you build around your workload needs to be able to flex up and down. So when things are a bit quieter, that's your runway to really, I've got freedom and space to get some of these more proactive stuff done, some of the preventative stuff to ensure that when the next busy season comes, I have an example recently in the membership. I was working with somebody who was just stuck dealing with absenteeism, all of the impacts of absenteeism, sick leave, productivity issues, frustration from staff. And she was just constantly in complaint, meeting, warnings, dealing with the impacts of all of this absenteeism. And we spoke about, like, how can we just get you in a place to not be the ambulance, very typical ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but what can you do to even if you can block out an afternoon or 1 hour a day for the next week to start to look at, okay, what's causing this absenteeism? What are we enabling? What data can we see about what's causing this? How can I improve processes? What documentation or guides or policies can we put in place to support our leaders to better manage absenteeism? Because that's the moving into proactive, and in doing so, you're going to reduce so much of that reactive work that you are doing. So that's what I mean about, like, let's not be stuck reacting to problems. Let's actually be in a place where we can stop them from happening in the first place.
Completely. And how do you think, Lisa, about where do HR communities fit into these systems of support? Like, how have you kind of thought about that with your membership in HRHQ?
HR can be quite a lonely role. And that's, like you said at the beginning, why I like to kind of think of myself as HR for HR. In the workplace, who does HR go to when they're feeling stressed, or when they're struggling, or they want to vent, or they have challenges? There isn't really anybody. Obviously, if you have a great HR team around you, that's invaluable. But even then, a lot of the time, they're feeling the same way. They're stuck in the same reactive firefighting. So having a community and having the privilege of building a community, to me, it's one, just not doing it alone. There's always somebody around to bounce off, to get ideas from, to learn from. And I think learning from people is key. In a community, there are people who are a few steps ahead of you. You can see what's possible. We can learn from their mistakes and stuff. My journey was riddled with mistakes and wrong moves. So now the beauty of what I do is I get to help people a few steps behind me avoid those and get the results faster, and not do the same thing. So I think community right now, especially in the world that we live in after the pandemic, not feeling so isolated, and also just it being normalized that, most people in HR are feeling the same way. It's not you. It's not, you're not bad at HR. You're not, unique. It's just a challenge we're all experiencing. And let's talk about how, we're managing it and feel a little bit more like heard and seen.
Thinking about that idea of seeing what's possible. When you think about an HR professional who's done this work, they've built their communication, their influence, their resilience, they've shifted their mindset. What does that person look like compared to where they started?
Yeah, I'm so lucky that I get to witness this myself through my programs and really be part of that transformation. So I think the biggest thing I see at the end of somebody doing this work is the job fulfillment. I spoke before about a lot of the time you fall out of love with HR, you resent the work, you think, why do I do this to myself? I could be, doing many jobs, earning the same amount for half the stress and half the challenges and stuff like that. Like I said, we all got into HR to make an impact, and that's really what we want to do. So when you put in the work, when you're more intentional about how you show up, more intentional about the brand and the perception you want to put out there, when you're more intentional about growing your confidence, I spoke about addressing limiting beliefs and mindset. When you do all of that work, your impact will grow. I think it's inevitable. They start, contributing in leadership meetings instead of just taking notes in the corner. Their confidence grows in their own voice, and they see the results of that. They can see the ripple effects.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Well, as you've been saying across this, Lisa, so much of this work you're talking about really is, right, an inside job. There's a lot of work that HR professionals are going to have to do that is, their choice. They're going to have to make those decisions, be real about themselves. But the beauty of having that community that you get to lean into is like, you're not the only one doing it. Like if you hear any of this in this podcast today and you feel like I must be the only person, just know that you're not. You're not the only one who experiences stress and overwhelm and burnout and frustration and resentment. Many people do. And it just happens to be really common in HR, but there's so many people who have found a way out of it, something you're obviously helping people do, Lisa, through your work, which I think is just so incredible because at the end of the day, like life is short. There's no reason for us to have to wake up and be in a job that we feel is so miserable. And sometimes that misery is us. Sometimes that misery is the job. Sometimes it's something else. But unless you're willing to take a step and change it, that whole dynamic isn't going to move away from you. And I think just helping people feel more empowered and take control of themselves and their mindset, the systems and the communities they have is such an incredible value add to the HR world. So it's such cool work that you're doing.
Thank you. I think that's such a key point too. And I think it's probably really confronting to sit with, but a lot of HR people need to realize that what's holding them back has been themselves all along, unfortunately. It's not the organization, it's not the system, it's not their manager, it's not the reactive workload. It's often them and their mindset and their approach and their thoughts and feelings. So yeah, as soon as you can at least become aware of that, that's a transformation in itself.
Lisa, where can people reach out and connect with you if they want to find out more about you or HRHQ?
Yeah, look, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post daily, and I have a community on there. So if you want to even just start just by following me, I love engaging in the comments, hearing what you're up to and your thoughts on things. I share a lot about this kind of stuff in my content and tips and tricks and things like that. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. Subscribe to my emails. I have some email series again that help delve into some of the stuff. I have a series called The Mindset Reset where I talk a lot about, the limiting beliefs and stuff holding us back. I have a series called HR Means Business. That's all around building business acumen and starting to be more strategic. So yeah, very much a goal of mine to help create that awareness and that support for people. And then, check out my website, learn more about Advisor Academy and my programs as well.
I love it. That's great. Thank you so much for being on here today, Lisa. Appreciate having you and your expertise and can't wait to see and learn more about HRHQ.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As an HR leader, you have a critical role in managing an organization's most valuable asset, its people. However, despite the importance of your role, other executives may not see the value of having HR leaders at the executive table. This is why we crafted the HR Outcomes Playbook. It's designed to help you close that gap and operate in a way that enlightens and excites the rest of the executive team and shows them that HR can provide value to an organization's bottom line. Get your copy at the link in the show notes now.